Welcome to Linda Strickland Art, No Rulz Watercolor. I'm Linda, this is Schooner, and this is the Getting Started video. This video shows you everything you need to know to get started watercoloring in 5 minutes or less. If you are new to watercolor, you may want to watch my setting up video on my YouTube channel, Linda Strickland Art. My goal today is to give you just enough information so that you feel confident to paint exuberantly. So let's get started. Getting started in watercolor. You can see that I set up my watercolor triangle. I've got my paper on a stiff board up at an angle so that the paint can run. We're painting in transparent watercolor. We want to use it to its best attributes. That's running, dripping, and moving on the paper, which is why we put it up at an angle. I'm going to do a very intricate drawing here. That's a leaf. Here's how you know it's a leaf. It has veins. Okay, I also put out a little fresh paint. You can add to the paint that's in your palette and it will reconstitute the dry paint that's underneath, and it works perfectly fine. But it's always a good idea to put a little fresh paint out. Now, we don't paint from our paint source, we paint from a juicy puddle, which is why your palette needs a mixing area. So I'm going to get my brush wet, tap it on the bottom. I'm going to touch it to my blotter one time, and now it's got just about the right amount of water in it. If I go from my water tub to my palette, it's full of water. If I go from my water tub to my blotter, and then I blot and blot and blot and blot, now it's like completely dry. So this is like the Goldilocks syndrome. It's too wet, it's too dry, it's just right. You have to figure that out for yourself. And that's the beauty of watercolor. That's the rub of watercolor. It's the beauty and the frustration is that it's up to you to figure your ratio of paint to water. Everybody's is a little different, and I can't really help you with that. The best way to do it is just get your brush in your paints and give it a whirl. So I'm going to paint with this manganese blue. I'm going to get a little bit of paint on my brush and mix up a juicy puddle by adding water to it. Now, when I say juicy, it should be wiggly. Move it on the palette. That's not very much, is it? Let's get a little more. I'm going to add some water. Okay, it should be wiggly, moving around like this. That's what you want to paint from, a juicy puddle. All right, I got my brush all the way down in there. Don't use the tip. Get the whole brush in there. And your brush will make one of 3 strokes. It'll make a hard edge, which identifies your shape. This being the outline of the leaf. And it'll make a soft edge, because this is just water on my brush. And I'm gonna come up and just touch this edge and make a nice soft edge. This one, you would use this for backgrounds or washes. Now, while that's shiny, I don't know if you can see on the video that that's shiny, good and wet, you can drop color in. I'm going to take a little bit of this opera red and mix up a juicy puddle of that, same way I did the blue, and just kind of drop it in there and let it move around. Notice the paint goes where the water is. It's staying where I put the water down on the paper. If I take water and make, a little river out here, the paint will follow that. And it pretty much, the paint goes where the water is, unless, of course, you do my favorite thing and make some drips happen, which that to me says I'm a watercolor. It's one of my favorite things. I'm gonna put a little yellow in here just to show you the drop in color. I'm gonna mix a big juicy puddle and drop some yellow in there too. Now, if I want more pink, I add more pink. If I need more blue, add more blue. As long as this is shiny and wet, you can monkey around with the color and let it run and drip and do its watercolor magic-y stuff. So you notice I haven't brushed this with my brush at all. So let me show you the difference. If I were to take the exact same colors, here's the blue, and I brush it and brush it and brush it into the paper, clean my brush, and then I took the pink and I brush it and brush it and brush it in there. That's not bad. And then if I take the yellow, I'll get my juicy puddle going, and I brush it all in there. I get that color as opposed to this interesting passage of color that happens here. So this is mixing on the paper, and this is mixing with the brush. This is much more exciting and interesting, gives you depth and some interest and texture. You can't really get texture in watercolor because the nature of it, it's flat. It just lays on the paper. So we do these trick things to make it have some depth. Okay, so cleaning your brush is a big thing too. I'm a tapper. I tap my brush on the bottom of my water tub like this. I don't have very much water in the tub. It's only about as deep as, I don't know, the length of the bristles of the brush. So I tap on the bottom. This is now a clean brush. There's no paint on it at all, just clean water. And then I can go and pick up my next color. Now there's another school of thought that the tapping is bad and ruins your brushes, and that you should swirl instead of tap. And so if you're gonna swirl, you wanna go in a figure 8 like this. That gets the paint out completely. And then again, you just have water on it. So you can be a tapper, you can be a swirler, whatever feels good to you, pick what you like. I have been a tapper the whole time I've watercolored, and my brushes last for years and years and years, so it works for me. So you should do what works for you. In everything with watercolor, do what works for you. One other fun thing to do, this is one of my favorite things, you'll see it on my videos, is to splatter. And really, if you don't know what to do on a watercolor, just splatter. It takes the pressure off, gives you interesting shapes and designs that kind of happen organically, which is a good thing. One more thing, to use your brush, the proper way to use it is like a mop. If you've ever mopped one of those old cotton mops, you put them down on the floor and you go back and forth. You never pick them up, just back and forth and back and forth. That's how you watercolor. That gives you a nice wash passage of color. So do that as opposed to this kind of stuff with the little tip of your brush. You'll be here all day, and it doesn't give you, it doesn't express the color out onto the paper in the way that this does. Okay, so mop with your brush. If you've got a flat brush, I'm going to tap mine on the bottom, and I'm going to make a, well, let's use this pink. Mix up my juicy puddle. All right, now this brush will cover some territory. This is already wet here, so it's really gonna go. With a flat brush, you can really cover ground because of the width of it, but I also can put it up on its edge and make the smallest line with it. Even as fat as that brush is, I can do detail lines with it like so. Even though I can also do this at the same time. Flat brushes don't bring back quite as much water as a round does. I mean, it kind of makes sense when you look at them. So that should get you started. Let's paint. Thank you for watching Linda Strickland Art, No Rulz Watercolor. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it, and comment below if you have any questions. And please post photos of your watercolors, both the fabulous successes and the exuberant fails. See you next time.